disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen, including this. So Mark Nixon, people know Mark Nixon, Canadian researcher, social media influencer. Mark Nixon says the power of the X community is unmatched. Shout out to Table Salt for exposing the elbows down movement. This is a great find. It proves Elbows Up was always performative, all theater. So Table Salt put this little montage together, a little expose on what we've said, that the Elbows Up movement, that Mark Carney is not the fighter you think he was going to be, and how you got duped in the election, how all of it was theatrical, how all of it was manipulative, how it was propagandized to you to believe that continuing down the liberal globalist tyranny was going to make significant impact for Canada. And you got duped into voting for the guy. So here's Table Salt in his little expose here to reveal all the details.
On April 17th, at the Leaders Debate, Mark Carney's closing comments were this.
We're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies. We will fight back with counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy.
But just one day before that, he had met with his cabinet and canceled the tariffs on the US, those retaliatory tariffs that came into effect after Liberation Day. This is an internal document that was published in the Canadian Gazette on May 7th. It shows that Mark Carney and his cabinet met to cancel the retaliatory tariffs.
So that's straight from the Canadian government website. April 16th. They already canceled the retaliatory tariffs against America. As Mark Carney is still promoting that he's going to fight against Donald Trump. As Mark Carney, as is shown in the top of the live stream here, that Mark Carney is going to side with Donald Trump on the Golden Dome. He's bending the knee more to Trump. Not fighting against him, not making Canada stronger. He's bending the knee to Trump. So, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Canada, you got duped. We got duped. And now the people that voted for Carney, thinking he was going to change, you made your bed, now you got to lay in it. And things are not going to look better for Canadians. Things are not looking better for Canadians because you elected a globalist central banker that has no intention of anything to save Canada. His intention is his agenda. His attention is Brookfield. His attention is to Century Initiative, to all the NGOs and business partners that he's associated with, the WEF. So he used and exploited Canadians, thinking that he was going to fight against America and put regulatory tariffs on America. Even at the debate, he was saying this, but right before the debate, he already dropped them and didn't tell a word to anybody.
Those elbows up tariffs on the US, all was a lie. He had the gall to look Canadians in the eye during the Leaders Debate in an election and say something he knew was not true.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. We're all going to stand up against Donald Trump.
So, Mark Carney, in his theatrical performance there, I gotta say, it's a better theatric performance than Justin Trudeau, considering that Trudeau used to be a drama teacher. Mark Carney seems more poised. I think that's it. He must have read the Art of Acting. He did some more improv back in the day, some commedia dell'arte. But that was Mark Carney using his theatrics to trick people into thinking that this is the biggest crisis on earth. Oh my God, America putting tariffs on Canada. We got to fight back. We got to be strong. Elbows up, Canada. Ah! Vote for me and we're going to fight back hard. Oh, by the way, I already dropped the tariffs. By the way, we could end this with a phone call. By the way, we didn't need the tariffs. So you all got duped. You all got duped. And even for people in America, they got duped, thinking that, oh, tariffs are going to bring back the jobs. Oh, tariffs are going to help, countries get a better deal. You got duped. You got duped because even your administration in America, the Trump administration, already revealed the game that even if by magic factories do appear back in America's soil, they're going to replace the jobs with robots. AI is going to take over your job. Hey, we're going to bring some more H-1B visa migrants to replace those jobs. So you're getting duped. You're getting duped. They have no respect, no initiative, nothing to serve the needs of you. But you'll stand out in the crowd like a schmuck with your elbows up and your red t-shirts, thinking that you're patriotic for a second. And they'll hire Mike Myers to play along with it. So, here, this is from BNN Bloomberg. Canada's new tariffs on U.S. dropped to nearly zero with exemptions, Oxford says. So they claim Canada has effectively suspended almost all of its regulatory tariffs on U.S. products, tamping down inflation risk and improving its growth outlook, according to Oxford Economics. The government imposed new import taxes of 25% on about $60 billion or US $43 billion of US-made goods in March in response to the first round of tariffs from the Trump administration. Canada also retaliated against the United States auto tariffs in early April by putting its own levies on U.S. vehicles. But Prime Minister Mark Carney's government then announced a 6-month tariff exemption for products used in Canadian manufacturing, processing, and food and beverage packaging, and for items related to healthcare, public safety, and national security. Automakers got a break, too. Companies that manufacture in Canada, such as General Motors, are allowed to import some vehicles into Canada tariff-free. So, again, the thing that I find so puzzling, and again, I'm not an economist, I'm not a smarty pants when it comes to tariffs, but it just seems kind of this back and forth, this cookie cutter measure of, oh, some things are going to not have tariffs, but this is going to have a tariff, which is going to affect this. It just seems so absurd in the fact that no matter what way you try to spin this, if you try to put tariffs on one thing and not the other, it's just going to be a domino effect. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing companies, and especially in auto industry, that are shutting down. They're halting production because it's too late. You already put the tariffs on. You went back and forth and with tariff and non-tariff and this back and forth tirade back and forth that companies couldn't keep up. So now a lot of the automotive industry is being jeopardized because they are scratching their heads wondering if things are going to be tariff, if things are not going to be tariff, if they can make parts from here, if they have to order parts from somewhere else. It's just devastating throughout. And what it seems like to me is Canada, Mark Carney, and Donald Trump could have easily resolved this day one. Could have easily resolved this. They knew the tariffs were coming. They knew that Donald Trump was intended to put massive blow towards Canada. They could have easily came to a deal. They could have sat down. Even Pierre Poilievre said this way before the election. Way before, I think in 2023. He said that Donald Trump, if he gets elected, is talking about trade. And if trade is being threatened with Canada and the United States, then we need to sit down and negotiate. Which is all we had to do. All we had to do. Carney could have sat down with Donald Trump. Trump could have called Carney. We could have renegotiated the trade agreement and figure it through. But no, you're going to put tariff after tariff and then drop the tariffs and then put more tariffs on and then drop those ones. And it's just been a clusterfuck ever since. Those exemptions mean Canada's tariff rate increase on the United States is nearly zero, according to calculations by Oxford. It's a very strategic approach from a new prime minister to really say, we're not going to have a retaliation, Tony Stillo, Oxford's director of Canada Economics, said in an interview. It's a strategic play on the government's part to not damage the Canadian economy. The sad part is it's already damaged. You've seen our GDP. You've seen the cost of living is drastically increasing. You see how devastating it is. You see tent cities across major metropolitan areas. People can't afford homes. People can't afford mortgage payments. The Bank of Canada even had to come forward and say things are going to get rough. The Bank of Canada, they usually lie to us with a smile on their face and tell you everything's good. They can't even lie to you anymore. So the government's already screwed the economy. But Mark Carney is going to lie to you and tell you, without telling you the whole truth of the matter, that he already dropped the regulatory tariffs, that this trade war is an absolute farce. He's going to tell you that, oh, I'm protecting the economy. I'm protecting the economy by this roller coaster trade war. Regulatory tariffs on some U.S. goods remain, including on food items such as orange juice, alcohol, and coffee, as well as clothing and cosmetics. So, good news, you can get a bit of a cheaper car. Not as cheap as China, but you can get a bit of a cheaper car. But in order for you to buy breakfast, it's going to be costly. Orange juice, alcohol, and coffee. I can understand the alcohol part because we can produce alcohol here in Canada. But again, Canada does not have the climate to produce a lot of oranges and can't really grow a lot of coffee beans. That's why you have trade. That's why you have trade. Because if we didn't have trade, you wouldn't have coffee. You wouldn't have orange juice. You wouldn't have tropical fruits growing in Canada, especially during the cold months. Carney fought and won an election last month by convincing millions of Canadian voters that he was the best candidate to handle a trade war with the United States, which buys about 3/4 of Canadian exports. The Prime Minister said Canada will have to strengthen its own domestic economy, partly through government-backed infrastructure and housing initiatives, and seek out new trade and security alliances with other countries. But he's also made it clear that he doesn't necessarily endorse dollar-for-dollar retaliation, which former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he supported in principle. A spokesperson for Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, whose department is responsible for administering the tariffs, did not reply to a comment on the Oxford report. Oxford still sees the Canadian economy slipping into recession this year. So even Oxford is telling you that Canada's doomed. That's slipping into a recession. I'd say we're already in a recession because of this heinous government, because of the decade-long liberal trade. But even them are coming forward. Even Oxford has to come forward with it. But it upgraded its growth forecast to 0.9% for this year and 0.3% for next year. Government spending should soften the blow of the trade war, the firm said. It's forecasting that the rate of inflation will briefly rise to 3% in 2026, but should quickly ease. So, cost of living is going to increase, but they're crossing their fingers, they're dotting their I's and crossing T's in the hopes that maybe things will turn around. Maybe if, the government prints more money. Maybe if we send more off to Ukraine. Maybe if we send more off to Israel. Maybe if we spend $272 million to Bangladesh for gender studies. The Canadian economy is going to get better. Trust me, it's going to get better. Trust the science. So here, this woman, Tokyo Rosie. Tokyo Rose is a song. Yesterday, Mark Carney said our relationship with the U.S. was over. Today, he is MAGA. So you remember Mark Carney made that special address that the relationship between Canada and the United States was over, that it was done, it was dead in the sand. And then you remember Donald Trump gave a call. And all of a sudden they become best friends. Here's Donald Trump. I just finished speaking with the Prime Minister, Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agreed on many things, and we will be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on the elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I love how he added that in his tweet, or I guess his Truth Social post. Thank you for your attention. But isn't it kind of interesting? And this is, again, that's why I don't get fooled by Donald Trump when he says, Canada's taking advantage of this and we need to make it a 51st state. I don't believe that rhetoric. I don't believe his rhetoric. I don't believe his threats. I think he's pulling legs the same way Carney pulled our legs. Because obviously you could see here, there's no threat. Canada's not taking advantage. Apparently Canada's, best friends. So why the tariffs? Why the 51st state? Why do you keep mentioning about subsidy? The subsidies of Canada are astronomical, are huge. Why do they mention that? Why does he keep mentioning that? Here's Michael Cooper, who's an MP for, I forget which riding. You can look up for yourself. But Michael Cooper says, Mark Carney is a proven sellout. As chair of Brookfield, he increased investment in the United States by 23%. So you remember, Brookfield moved their corporate office as soon as Mark Carney became the leader of the Liberal Party and now Prime Minister. They moved his offices, his headquarters, to America, to New York City. As he was telling people that there was a crisis and how America was to blame and how we need to put the pressure on America business, he sent his own lobby firm, his own investment firm, down to the United States and lied about it on camera. Meanwhile, he reduced investment in Canada. Mark Carney will never put Canada first. And that's because people were blindsided. People had their emotional heartstrings played at when they thought that Donald Trump was such a big threat, watching CBC, CTV, Global, the mainstream media, constantly parroting the Trump factor, constantly parroting the rhetoric that was coming out of Trump and Elon Musk and making this charade and propagandizing people. People were emotionally attached to Mark Carney that they sold out their country in support of a central banker whose whole identity, his whole business is to sell out countries. Look at what he did for the Bank of England. Look at what he did for the Bank of Canada. Look at what he's done for Brookfield. Look at what he's done for the Century Initiative. Look at any part of history of Mark Carney, and you'll understand why this guy, this globalist central banker, was hand-selected to become leader of the Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau's successor, and then duped people into voting for him to become prime minister. And there's still questioning about the election. There's still suspicion about the election. They've done more recounts. There's more conservatives that are winning in certain ridings, but even so, just the mayhem, the mess, the debacle of this election and previous elections and elections Canada as a whole really all have to come into play. There needs to be a full investigation on how we actually properly administrate an election. Because what we're doing now is just a joke. It's a joke. And that's what they turned democracy into this country to be, a joke. That's why you get someone like Mark Carney instead of someone who actually represents Canada. Whether it being the Liberal, Conservative, NDP, whoever.